This is Think or Be Eaten, and we have with us Andy Sr. from the Uticans for 9/11 Truth, and you're familiar with him, and his partner Herb Smith, and also supposedly joining us for this was Jeff Long, and he's missing in action. So we're going to continue this, or actually start this program, just Andy and myself, and perhaps if Jeff comes across, then we'll patch him in. But what we were doing, it's really not, it isn't born of very good intentions, I have to admit.
Oh, it's malevolent.
Thank you.
It's downright malevolent is what it is.
All right, that's right. You're absolutely right. We are malevolent and purple and clairvoyant.
Yes.
But I have to say, it's worth doing every so often because our assessments aren't really that malevolent, but honest, and the reasons why. And of course, and I got to say this to you, the answer I would get back to is also, well, why do you bother anymore? I have to say, this Patriot stuff is not cutting it. It's not making it. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever. Everybody who's, quote, in the movement and is a droogie or a groupie of any of the show hosts who are either absolutely ignorant or flat-out liars, they think that this is like rocking the world, and it's not. I mean, you know it. When you step outside, and I do, people have no idea what's going on in this kind of thing. So in a sense, there won't be much harm done because really it's not making a difference.
No, we're not upsetting any apple carts because they're virtual apple carts.
Yes, right. Yeah.
They're imaginary apple carts, as it were.
Well, we did this once before, but with a lot more vitriol, because then we started to realize who the wolves were. Yes, that laughter you hear in the background is the nervous type, and with us, joining us late, but that's okay, is Jeff Long. Now, Jeff's here, and Andy's here, and I'm here. And let me just cut to the chase right now. What this was all about, as I had mentioned before, we were looking once upon a time for wolves in sheep's clothing, and that happened in the days of Beyond the Grassy Knoll, and we did it with a lot more angst because actually we were let down by a lot of people. We realized what they were doing. This time around, it's more like poke and stick in people's eyes. However, we are kind of serious about what we're going to say here. What we chose to do is do a poll between the three of us and to come up with our top 10 of the bottom feeders in the Patriot / alternative / left gatekeeper crap, whatever you want to say. And we did do that, and we ranked it point-wise with first place, of course, being the worst, being 10 points. All right, now at that point, Jeff, is there anything you want to say before we get into the real nastiness?
No, just I'm curious to see how this is going to go.
Oh, yeah, all right. Okay.
Phone roundtable. The way that it was originally set up and sending out the list, it was, there's so many different variables and way we could have gone picking these people out. And of course now, as we've been pushing the list around, I'm like, oh, what about this person? Oh, we could have added that. But I'm sure these people will wind up into the conversation.
There were 22 individuals, and that's taking out the repeats. And like you're saying, Jeff, we have 10 that we use, so that means 12 by extension. Did make the cut, even though we did add 3 top dishonorable mentions. So here's what we did. We did the voting, and this is what we came up to. Leading the list of the worst 10, number 1 is Alex Jones. And we'll go back, we'll do a little thumbnail in each of them, so I'll go through the top 10. Alex Jones, number 1. Number 2, Jim Uncle Fetzer. 3, Coast to Coast in general, Norway in particular, and also, I can't take Ian Punnett either. 9/11 Truthers, we were allowed groups as persons, and so 4th place went to 9/11 Truthers. In fact, I think it's the 9/11 New York Truthers in particular, but then we on to, Glenn Beck. Number 6 is Morgan Reynolds. Is he still alive? Number 7 was Steve Quayle, Oh, I'm sorry, no. Number 7 was Tarpley, Webb Tarpley, who has just released something recently. Number 8, Steve Quayle. Number 9, I almost feel bad for her, Judy Wood. And number 10, we had a 2-way tie. The group, the Jews did it. The individual, Bill Deagle. And then dishonorable mention, the top 3 were John Gold, and a tie between Rush Limbaugh and Corey Rowe, and whoever thought you would use those names in the same sentence. Now, I tell you what, we were going to divvy up 3 of the individuals amongst ourselves to kind of like introduce it because that was their guy, more or less. We all can jump on Alex Jones. So I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me go to you first, Jeff, and then Andy, as far as your particular problem with Alexander the Great.
The main one is the fact that he has built such a huge empire. He's always gloom and doom, but he will be able to educate you and help you fight the New World Order for $19.95 a pop, plus shipping and handling. And he has an endless warehouse of stuff that he can ship you that way. So it's just the way that he does his shows, to spread it out over 4 hours. I'm sure it's probably part of the programming, but it's just the constant megaphoning, even without the megaphone in front of his mic. He's just a little bit of a narcissist.
A little bit.
Let's not be bold here.
Yeah. I mean, he can definitely be entertaining, but for somebody who is talking about the coming police state and they're going to stomp down on our heads and New World Order is about to come in and seize up property, by way of the EPA and having China take back the stuff that they need that we've put up as collateral. He just bought a couple really large mansions. He's got a couple corporations under his belt, and he is making bank. So it doesn't really seem like he's too worried about the coming doom.
Well, Jeff, I'll tell you,
financially, things are saying something different, but he just sounds more like one of those prophetic preachers. Every Sunday, sweating it out in church, screaming fire and brimstone as he's handing out the collection plates.
Yeah, and then boning the organist after the service.
Oh, yes. Well, that's why it's an organist.
And a pipe one at that. Never mind.
Yes.
All right.
A diapason will do it. All right.
Two things, Jeff. One, we can't fault him for at least being successful. However, the caveat there is, and I remember I stopped listening in 2003. It only took me about 2 years to get sick of it. And then when I found out later on, somebody said, did you realize that he's stumping for Ron Paul? And when I left Jones, at least he was still saying the government's corrupt and it's unredeemable. Then all of a sudden, when I heard he was pushing for Ron Paul, I'm going, wait a second, something's not making sense here. And it was at that time also that the website got pumped up real big time. He expanded the operation exponentially. Then he also, I can't remember the guy's name, and it's not really that big a deal, but it's happened also contemporaneously. Do you remember the blogger of some respect that I used to have on every so often? And one time he told me, I'm really not that good a speaker, so I'm not, I'd rather not come on. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me, but sure, okay. And then Jones had hired him. Do you remember who that is?
That wasn't Killtown.
No.
Constantine?
Huh?
Alex Constantine?
No, was it? Are you kidding me? You can't get him out of a cave.
Was it?
Damn.
One of the loose chain
triad. No, he lives in Arizona, and he really and people asked me to have him on. He really was good, and I really was. I didn't hit him all the time. It was periodical, and the time came around. Somebody said, "Hey, listen, can you get him back on again?" And that's when he gave me through emails that explanation. I'm like, "Well, okay." And then the next thing I knew, he's working some blog for Jones. So that's okay. And I mean, like I said, I like the guy, but then I understood what was going on. And the thing I always miss here is that when people don't want to do something, they lie to me.
Right.
And then I find out it's like, well, fuck you. I mean, why can't you just tell me straight? I have respect for you. It never happens, man.
Maybe something changed with his voice. He could at least go the speak and spell Stephen Hawking version and talk to you that way. Put it out electronically. But
the point is, Alex doesn't play nice with the children. Second of all, he has absolutely no shame as far as being full of hubris and himself. And I'll tell you, that tells me that he's protected to a certain point and there's money behind him. I don't think that the government is. I think that he's got some people in Texas who are well-heeled, like his own man, who are backing him. All of a sudden, he explodes on the scene with an exponentially larger production thing. As you said, as it says in the AlexJonesMachine.com website, goes to a Tony neighborhood, nice zip code, comes out with 4 LLCs. You don't do that selling, buy my video. It isn't happening. So at any rate,
yes.
The one thing I did write to Harry today, Harry wrote me an email, and I said, you know what? I said about Jones. I said, did you ever think that, like Hal Turner, he might be giving info to the feds? Do I know? No. But I do know one thing, that Jones told Harry back when we ran GCN at the stations here in Florida, the 2 a.m. stations. Jones told Harry that the FBI had told Jones that they were suspecting a dirty bomb in Houston. And my point then and my point now is why the FBI talking to Alex? I'll leave it at that. Moving on, Andy Sr.
Yes.
What's your problem?
My problem with Alex, I bought some of his stuff. I got the Prison Planet Sippy Cup.
Really, the Tippy Tommy Cup?
Yeah, all these nice little things, and the whole the New World Order board game, all that fun things.
That's a great idea.
Hey, is your sippy cup? Is it the kind that's collapsible that that pushes down at free fall speed?
No, what it is, you can turn it into a helmet so that you'll deflect any kind of EMPs that are being directed at you.
Yes, it's lined with aluminum foil.
There you go.
And it's good, but no, Alex as you said, he reminds me of one of those guys that tells everybody, sell your possessions to me, and join me on the hilltop for the end of the world, and then everybody meets on the hilltop, and the guy is gone to the Grand Caymans.
Right. There it is. Well, that's another Jones that did that too. His name was Jim.
Yes, but he that was less successful.
Well, it depends on what you call success in that situation. Some people would say it was a sterling operation.
He was batting 1,000 with his supporters. They were all knocked them all down.
And I just wanted to interject something as well. Jeff, you are a shameless name dropper.
Okay.
You did this to me in 2 emails recently. It's like, I dined with the Rothschilds at their estate. All right. I want to clear the air about this because if you hear it, I'd probably hit you with a cream pie. All right, first of all, you were smoking what on what rooftop in Tribeca with Rupert?
I assume it was medical marijuana, but he was at this conference that was going on, and he was talking to this chickadee, this up-and-coming independent reporter, and she was just gloating on him for everything that he has done. And she wanted to sort of get under his wing, and I was like, I need to talk to you for a second at a later point. By
way of his zipper? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the night before he got so crocked, he was there with his handler, whoever this guy is that he runs around with that does all his dirty work, and just watching him. He was so trashed from whatever bar hopping that they were doing, and people were like, hey, guess who I am? I'm Mike Rupert. People buying him drinks. But he was plastered, and it was this 4-day conference event where we were in Tribeca in Manhattan for this September event, and he was being put into his FEMA cage that was built inside these nice lofts, and he was so plastered that his assistant, this guy, was having to pull off his pants to get him comfortable in his cot or whatever, and it was just kind of a disturbing thing for all of us sitting out in the living room watching this. As
I know that's how I get comfortable.
Yeah. Well, it was just the rantings as he was drunk and the stench of alcohol coming from the vomiting into his bucket by his bed. So. Oh,
it smells like victory.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, he was up there with a few.
It was all coming from the wilderness.
There you go. If I can find a rim shot, I'll enter it right here. All right.
Well, I wanted to attack him a little bit about the his stuff with Gary Webb.
Who, Rupert?
Because I think that he had something to do with the cover-up there.
You talking about the murder of Webb?
Yeah, well, with the cover-up of the murder of Webb.
Right, okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
good point.
Dealings with the family, yeah.
And, of course, he didn't even make our top 10, nor the dishonorable mention, because for the most part, I think he's been marginalized. But anyway, the other thing is, okay, and then you tell me a couple of days before that you were quaffing a few buckets with Wayne Mad Dog Madsen.
Oh, I love drinking with Wayne. You can't have a better bar person around than this criminal district talking shit around these other people around there. So he's definitely a fixture. So having him as a bar buddy is definitely the most fun around here from a lot of the people that I run into.
All right, and then let me say this: is he still a contributor to the Rock Creek Free Press?
He does.
Bastards.
Yeah, it's like people love and hate the stuff that he's doing, but
he's full of shit.
I'll publish some of his stuff on my blog, and other things I'm like, that one I'm like I need to look into more. But
all right, yeah. Andy, watch this. Hey Jeff, whatever happened to my book review?
It got booted.
Yeah, okay.
The same way that my Libya article did at the same time. So hopefully this upcoming we're doing that stuff again.
One of the reasons why I kept it as short as I did, one of the excuses for not running it would be it's too long. So I figured I'd take that out of the equation and got as general as I could. Because I mean, without and also doing it pro bono. I mean, how much time am I going to spend with this for someone to say, "Oh, this is shit"? So I figured, hey, I keep it short. That's all right. Now, I want to move over to number 2, and I know you got a great story about this, Jeff, but I'm going to hit Andy first because we had dealings with this guy as well, and so had I when he was a guest with regard to Kennedy's. He's written every book apparently on that, and that's Jim Fetzer, who came in number 2 of the top 10 worst. So Andy, go hit it first because I know Jeff's got a good one, and I'll stay at it because.
Oh yeah, the mouth that roared and kept roaring.
Hey Andy, you remember this? They called me a clown.
They're making fun of me.
Well, what do you expect, Jim? All right, so go ahead, Andy. You hit him first.
Oh yeah, the mouth. As I said, the mouth that roared and kept roaring. He made a good entry into the field there, but. Then he started to. He took up with the left-handed path of toward truth, and coming around from the other side, and his partnership with Judy, who will attack later or discuss, I should say. And
she probably liked being attacked, though. Is it true what they say about you people? Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, God.
Uncle Festus, yes, Fester, go ahead.
Well, yes, he was originally, he was right on board with everybody. Of course, he started out when he was talking to you, he thought they were hijackers.
Yes, he did.
And then suddenly he was pals with Stephen Jones, and then suddenly the Hegelian split occurred.
But who did he throw overboard first? There was somebody who was always very amenable and tried to be a peacemaker.
Oh, Kevin.
Yes, from Wisconsin.
Oh, yes.
He threw him overboard first, I think.
I think they were still buddies up to a point, but then.
Well, Fetzer kept attacking him.
Yeah. It was after, and it was even after the thing with Jones, because he was when Kevin Barrett was running for, I think, Congress. He told Fetzer, because he wanted to keep the 9/11 stuff more or less from getting into the realm of the stand-up comedy material, telling him not to lay off the no plane stuff, and I think that's where their break occurred.
Well, remember they were doing a show together, and then Fetzer was attacking him on the show.
On the show,
yes.
Right.
And they would have like Morgan Reynolds on there. They were doing a tag team on him. It was very interesting. I remember. I'm just searching. I'm taking a wrong turn down memory lane as we speak. And I know that's one of those amazing things that occurred. But they were doing a show, and he was calling himself the Dynamic Duo.
Oh no!
Oh Lord!
Yeah, who's Robin? Never mind.
I think Kevin was supposed to be. He was the boy wonder, and not the boy. He's my age or older, but Fetzer, I guess, was supposed to be Batman or maybe Batsman. I'm not sure, but one or the other.
Or the really true meaning of Batman.
Yes, in the Belfry.
As
Batman
you go.
In the Belfry.
All right, I'm going to throw it over to Jeff because this is a great story. But before I do, I just have to say one thing too, and that is, yeah, it's true. Fetzer didn't seem to have any interest or deep background about 9/11. And yeah, when he was on one of my shows, he just mentioned it in passing, making some kind of analogy about the hijackers, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Next thing I know, the guy busts to the front of the line, makes all this hubbub, starts. The Scholars for 9/11 Truth was about as snobbish and as elitist as it can get. And then, like, that lasts a year and everything blows up. I mean, this guy was like some kind of bull in the china shop. I wish I could have thought something better, but, I mean, just crashing shit and blowing things up, and it's like it took you 12 months to destroy this, and then he continues on. And so I wondered about that, and then here we go with the great tale, Jeff, that you have, and take it away.
And this must be about the Judy Woods portion at the National Press Club.
I'm thinking about the wrestling match that was staged, but go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. He had set up this event at the Press Club with Judy Wood, and I remember I got there a little bit late from work, and Greg Jenkins was outside, Dr. Greg Jenkins, telling me, there's nothing up there to see, nothing to worry about. Why don't you, you can go do something else, go hit a bar or something like that. It's really not worth the time. So that was one of the first instances where Greg was doing this kind of thing, just trying to push people away. But it was mostly the DC group that was sitting there in the audience listening to this, and Fetzer went through the entire briefing himself of Judy Wood's material. He wouldn't allow Judy to do it. She just sat there in the audience, and he did her presentation for her and explaining things and answering questions for her, even if people were asking her in the audience, going through her material. It was after that we took the side room where we had set up cameras and mics and lights and everything else to do the Judy Wood interview. And Dr. Greg Jenkins had set that up as being the narrator, moderator, attacker in that piece, and was only able to get off a couple questions, but just trying to get her to answer some of his claims, or at least some of the questions that he had about some of her claims about her research. She was just not able to explain what she was talking about. It seemed like somebody who had an idea about a book report that they might have seen that they were supposed to have ready for the teacher, but maybe read some Cliff's Notes, and the stuff that she was talking about, she just seemed so damaged, like a deer in headlights, that she didn't know what she was talking about. So people in the room, there was maybe 12 people that came over from the group to watch this. Fetzer was back in the corner watching this piece, and so of course some of the women in the room were getting antsy because they felt that she was being attacked for whatever reason. And then at one point, when the piece was done, we saw how absurd it was. Everybody in the room felt uncomfortable because it was just such a bizarre situation to watch. That's when Fetzer came over, started yelling at Greg and calling him a bunch of names, saying that this was a setup, nothing but a hit piece. He was spitting on him. Greg stood up, and they started going at it, poking at each other's chests, just yelling at each other. And then at one point, there was this weird pause, and then they both started smirking as if they were both going to try to, crack up laughing. But then they both gained their composure and then started back in at each other. And then that's when several of us in the corner were looking at each other going, did you see that? Anyway, did you see that?
Mm.
What was that? Did you see that smile? Did they just stop? Was that it's just a little odd. That seems staged. And the tension was incredibly high in the room at that point. But after that, we kept thinking, okay, something is very, very fucking wrong here.
Yeah, that was a good story. No two ways about it. And I'll just ask you straight out. A lot of people throw around these tags about being COINTELPRO, I mean, some idiot once referred to me as being controlled opposition. Jeez, if I had that kind of money, man, it would be so great. Mm-hmm. You know, and it just gets, after a while, it's absolutely negligent that it's thrown around, and it doesn't even mean anything. Mm-hmm. But in the case of Fetzer, really, what do you think the chances are on a scale of 1 to 10 that he's handled, and he's in there deliberately to make a big pile of dirt?
I would say 10, at least, just from seeing what he's done recently the past couple months, jumping on the Pilots for 9/11 Truth website. All of a sudden, he seems to be attacking the CIT information. He's everybody, all the pilots in there asking, like, what the fuck are you doing in here? You know, Fetzer, what are you trying to do? What's your question? What's your aim? It's just you come out of nowhere. What is going on? He just kind of showed up, but it's after that press club piece downtown, he did go to a bar around the corner with Judy and their lawyer and somebody, and this other weird person in our group who was a little bit suspect at the time. And I took my friend Aaron, and we sat there listening to them, like, oh, yeah, we're kind of on your side. We're just very interested in what you guys are talking about. And Judy was concerned with the conversation, but for whatever reason, Fetzer said, oh, these guys are fine. I can vet for them.
Well, what do you mean?
I didn't know who the hell this guy was, really, and he's vouching for me in the bar. But they immediately start talking about going to talk to the Cubans next day at their embassy to put on a presentation for them. And I said, well, okay, at this point it just seems like they're trying to give us information to feed back.
Well, clarify something. You said Judy was concerned. Was she someone who was like, we don't really know these guys, so why are we embracing them? Is that where she was coming from?
Yeah.
That would be normal.
She was about to go into talking about the next day's events and where they were actually going with their itinerary. But it just seemed like they wanted us to know what the itinerary was. For some reason, one of the local radio guys around here on WPFW, the Pacifica radio branch, tend to have her on all the damn time talking about 9/11 related issues. So it seems like DC is getting all of their 9/11 research from Dr. Judy Wood.
Has she gotten any better in her delivery? Or does she still sound like somebody who just got hit with a plank?
I haven't heard her recently, but I still think that it's along those lines.
I'm thinking crazy Guggenheim, you know?
Yeah, it's like listening to a middle school girl talk about science. You know, it's just, instead of real terms, everything's the poofiness, the poofy of the clouds.
And the dustification and, all right.
Right. The marshmallows and powder puffs and...
Yes. What was it? I think those are the lyrics in The Rain in the Park, another thing by the Cowsills. Real quick, is it your belief that supposed, shall we say, dissonance interview between herself and some guy who was trying to make sense out of her, are you saying that was widely also a phony? Is that the Greg we're talking about?
Well, yeah, because I've had issues with him the entire time, the whole stay-at-home physics dad, that anytime somebody came to the group, he would sidelight them, take them to a corner, explain Physics 101 about buildings real quick, and then tell them there's nothing else to see here, don't worry about it, I can give you some DVDs, this group's not worth hanging out with, and send them along.
Okay.
So it was never growing, and we noticed that, so that's when we decided to try to out him in one of the meetings. But
what was the purpose of him, not taking her apart, but he definitely humiliated her. Was that part of this whole deal, or was that some stage show too, or what? I think it's you take some of the deepest, blackest parts of our technology and budgeting. Look at how much money we're throwing into dominating space right now. Not the rest of the stuff, but U.S. Cyber Command and the Air Force's Space Command. Their whole mission right now is to dominate space. And that's one thing that Rumsfeld was going for in a big way. He couldn't get money for any of that stuff until 9/11 happened that morning. He was meeting with Congress later that day, and they wrote him a blank check that said, you're good to go, whatever you need to do for space to protect us from these evil Al-Qaeders. With the Air Force Vision 2025, they've got it all mapped out.
that their whole goal is to dominate space. So I think with the information that she has, there's a lot to the technology she's talking about, but it's like the kind of stuff that we're not ever going to be really privy to, because it's the really nasty stuff that the elites are using and have been controlling for quite some time. I mean, it was Westinghouse who stole all of Tesla's technology in his laboratory and shut everything down and shipped it off once he died in 1943. So,
right.
Westinghouse controlling CBS, but they're also the same people who are building these screwed up nuclear reactors, like the ones in Fukushima. So I think that they gave her some good technology, some stuff that's real, and then just put in a shitload of disinformation in there, and gave it to such a damaged person, a PhD type who had been in a coma for like 7 years. And
do you think Judy Wood is handled?
Handled or came out of the coma being reprogrammed that way somehow. I mean, she just seems to be the perfect dented Del Monte can, that it's just not right. But yeah, I definitely think that.
And her delivery, I mean, honestly, she's got an IQ probably higher than the three of ours put together. But you know that when she tries to do a presentation, it just isn't going to cut it. And so you can let her go out there, and God bless her. I mean, she has it together as far as the IQ factor and the knowledge, but she just does not work when she's trying to break it down. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, let her go out. She'll self-destruct. And I think that's pretty much what happens. I mean, who could really actually listen to her for more than 2 minutes? I mean, if you didn't know, it's like, what? I'm out of here.
Oh yeah, it's tragic to watch, and then you just look at it and you're like, wow, nobody's ever going to pay attention to this information she's talking about because of who it's coming from. And that's part of the whole game for these people is take the disaffected type, the damaged types, and give them a bunch of good information, but nobody will listen because of the presentation.
Let me slide through this, and then we're going to rebound back into this, because in the number 4 slot was number 3 slot, was Coast to Coast. Let me just hit that. If anybody's got anything they want to add, fine. But I think we all kind of understand that. Plus, they're not really on our side. And then it goes back to the 9/11 truthers, which puts us right back in the same situation as we're talking about with Fetzer and Wood. I'm only going to say this about Coast to Coast. I think they did a great job when Art Bell in the beginning. Fine. When they started getting into this, the realm of politics, especially back in 9/11, I had questions. There was a woman, I don't know if you'll recall this name, she is now the late Ariel Louise, who worked out of Minnesota and hooked me up with a lot of guests. She knew Michael Trudeau in the day. She actually lived in Burnside, Minnesota, where GCN is headquartered. And Ariel was really, I just enjoyed Ariel so much. She was a straight shooter. We had a very good relationship. She'd give me guests and such, and it was terrific. Unfortunately and tragically, a year after we last talked, which was during the summer, one of 2 especially brutal summers up in Minnesota, back to back, she said to me the last time I spoke to her during that summer that she'd love to get down to North Carolina and just get out of the heat. She couldn't take the heat. I think she lived in a mobile home. And the next thing I knew, I was sent an email which said that she had passed almost a year or a month to the year that I had spoken to her last through another heat wave. And I mean, that was tough to take. She was a good person. But she also knew Bell. And she claimed that Bell was never contacted or part of a government thing. She said no. And I tell you what, Ariel was so much of a straight shooter that even if she liked Bell, which I think she did, she'd say so. Because Bell was already gone. He had already married, which she thought was interesting. He had married right away, what it was right away, some Filipino woman, and then therefore, moved to the Philippines. So she said no, he wasn't. Okay, I'll take her on that. But still in all, Norrie is a sleaze. Punnett is, oh man, I tell you, oh man, there isn't enough. He is such a snobbish little prick. And he's got himself his degree in divinity, which means exactly what? That he knows Jesus Christ? Not necessarily. The two of them now, you can't tell me, aren't bought into it. They knock down anybody who comes on and says anything about 9/11 contrary to the government story, and yet Norway has the sleaze to say at other times when he has somebody on about Kennedy, we're going to still try to get to the bottom of it. Kiss my ass, George. You're not going to get to the bottom of it. I mean, you won't even allow anybody to say anything about 9/11, and you're going to go to the bottom of the Kennedy assassination? C2C is interesting in a lot of ways, but I tell you what, the shows have gotten worse as far as I'm concerned. And when they have their all call-in shows, I got to get out of there because I mean it is too freaking crazy. So Coast to Coast, on which, let's face it, Alex Jones or Steve Quayle pop up an awful lot. There's something going on there, and I don't think it's good. But Coast to Coast to me is a tremendous, tremendous disinformation outlet. You can't be talking serious about 9/11 and then talk about flying squirrels and shadow people and cows falling out of the sky with Linda.
Well, they do at least they must do something every day about 2012 or
the Mayan flu.
It's a constant fear mongering too. They're trying to keep people tuned in with that.
Damn, but I mean, when you listen,
it's a gloom and doom soap opera.
But they all are.
Diving into it.
People crack on me because I'm saying, look, there's no way out. That's just the way it is. It's a rigged deal. Deal with it. And they're like, well, blah. Well, what do you want me to tell you? I'm not fear-mongering. I'm just saying, go ahead and try to subvert, overthrow the government and do something new. How's that working? It ain't. Let's be real. Okay, so that's that. But you're right. Fear-mongering. And why? Because it keeps people listening because they love the neurotic handkerchief twist. They got to listen to it because they got nothing else. And let's realize one thing. And Andy, you were a witness to this stuff, especially when I started doing the live shows and at night. I mean, there were a lot of people who loved that show, and I hated the fact because most of them are absolutely bull-goose loony, and these people swell the ranks of the Patriot Idiot group and the alternative news group. These are people who are going to effect nothing. Most of them are, I have to say this, most of them are on government dole, and that's fine. That's okay. But how can you knock the government and take their money? So anyway, Coast to Coast lets you know just how many wacko people there are out there, and it's scary. Enough about C2C. I'm sorry, but that's the way it goes. Now we're going to go to 9/11 Truthers, which puts us back in the same situation that Jeff's in down in D.C. and that, Andy, you've had dealings with, if not so much with the New York City crew, which Jeff also has something to do with, but just what you've been doing up in Utica and also the strange passing of that crew that came out of what was that, Albany?
Oh, Albany, yes. That was very interesting. Woo-hoo. And one guy actually turned. He went from being... and he seemed rather lukewarm to begin with, but I remember when they were on your show, they were very, that was nice, but they were trying to court us, how'd you like to join us, you want to be a member, come and, and I was thinking, I don't want to cast my lot with these people because I don't trust them, and my instincts were pretty good, and Herb was, we were both talking about it, and I said, I really feel very nervous about this. And my instincts about those things generally are pretty good.
Well, so Andy,
it worked out that it wasn't. We let them go, and they imploded, and they were funded by the university over there, the state university, which means, in other words, they're getting the free printing of their periodicals, and so there's got that. That's not. You have to be independent in order to be
right.
In any way. I would say reputable. If you're taking money from the SUNY State University in New York, then you're not. You're just they're not gonna look into anything. They're gonna sweep it all under the rug as they've done.
But when they did the show with me, and you picked up on this, I mean, they were just like kind of barely compliant. And the one that turned was also on it, and he was the worst of the two, but they didn't seem warm to it at all. And then after it was done, it's the old story. Usually somebody puts up the link on their website to the interview they had with me and blah, 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 and vice versa. Boom, gone. It never happened.
No, they wouldn't. They should have done that at least. And that was, to me, that would have been to have a documentation of them talking about this topic and then not mention it. Anytime I come on your program to talk about anything, whether it's about this topic or usually about something else, but these days, or with Herb, it goes up, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
It can't be. You can't. You have to. But so they were trying to hide their supposed light under a bucket, and I don't think there was a light.
No, and they may have been in the beginning of something that eventually turned out to be what it is, and that is the one defection, and then finally the whole thing being pulled down. Now you know the hijinks, Andy, that we dealt with Nico Hopt and all that, trying to stay as much as we could, hanging on with them to try to understand. Also with the Web Fairy. Oh, and who was that other person? Oh my God, that other one that looks like a Tinkerbell. I can't remember.
Oh, Paula Gloria?
Oh, geez. And then finally I had to check out. I mean, it was just too crazy. And of course, now I've just posted that 5-minute clip from Jim Kosher's running video of what happened that day. And I mean, there's a plane that comes in from the right hand of the screen. Now, if you haven't seen it, no big deal, but have you seen that part, Andy?
I've seen, actually we bought the DVD.
You did? Okay.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm trying to. I need to get in the proper mood to watch the whole thing because I want to sit down and look at it.
All right.
But I know that it's. But yeah, you're dealing with Nico. Nico. I don't mind him, with the understanding that yes, he's a ball breaker.
Actually, that's the most endearing part about him.
Yeah, I know. That's fine, and that's his thing. But I see him as being a performance artist, which
yes, there you go.
Isn't necessarily a put down. It's what he does. But the no plane stuff is it's absurd.
Well, and the reason I say that is that because, and I had just emailed Herb, who looked at it, and I said, listen, I'm going to tell you straight out, I'll go to the wall with this guy. He sat on his stuff for 10 years, afraid of it, and now he's finally put it out. I think the documentary isn't all that well done, but the raw footage, the footage is the footage, and he's got that second plane coming in from screen right, and it is booking, but before you even pick it up visually, you can hear it, and there it is, and this no plane crap ain't making it, and there you have it. And that's the only reason I bring it up, because it's like, let's forget this no plane shit, okay? There were 2 planes, they went into the building, that's how it goes. If there was TV fakery, as Victor Thorne had written, I can believe that, but it happened in the studios before and out on mainstream outlets. In other words, they could have CGI'd something to make that plane look a little bit more like a commercial airliner, because Jim said, in his running monologue he's got going while he's filming, he goes, that didn't look like any commercial airplane. He goes, that looked like a Cessna. Well, of course, it wasn't that small, but the point is well taken. That was not a commercial airliner-sized plane, and that jives with the Fox guy who called into the studio, and those women who were hysterical at the time knowing the first tower had gotten hit, and saw the second hit and said, that's no American Airlines. Well, of course it wasn't. It was also not a United Airlines.
Well, that would have been the easy part for the TV fakery, to where the stuff's going on, what people are seeing, and then what a couple cameras are feeding into the studios, they do that on the fly. I mean, it's like you've got college kids that can do that kind of TV fakery live out of their dorm rooms. I've seen from some 2004 YouTube videos to where the stuff that they developed from picking up parts out of Radio Shack. So,
well, Jeff, let me ask you a question. Okay, let me pose this to you and tell me if it's plausible. If it's not, that's fine. But Victor had gotten somebody who seemed like a reasonable individual. This was not Victor's idea. He interviewed someone who said, okay, look, there's a lot of talk about TV fakery. That's all that those 9/11 guys did. But where was the fakery really? The person's contention was that if there was fakery, it could have been, shall we say, bottlenecked through somebody who could have cloaked or whatever. And I don't know the terminology, but here's my scenario I gave to Victor. Mm-hmm. The only video we have of the North Tower being hit is the Naudet brother video. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the quintessential, money shot. Wow, how lucky could they have been to have been there?
All right, but you know what?
Yeah.
Be it as it may, Herb, Andy, Herb has always had the biggest misgiving he has is whether or not what we're seeing as far as the plane's behavior as it impacts the towers is real. It looks like it's being absorbed. And I understand all that. And Herb and I talk about it. We don't go at it. We talk about it. And I'm like, but Herb, that's what the people said it would happen. They said it would be absorbed. it would be like a pencil passing through a screen door's webbing. Now, the second tower hit, again, and here's where I'm going with this. Okay, let's say we know the government knew it was going to happen. Could they have prepared, Jeff, in any way, shape, or form, that they knew that nobody would really have the North Tower hit, and that they could have at least practiced cloaking it, or whatever you want to call it, to make it look bigger than it was? And they see how they did. Now, what happens is what? Maybe 20 minutes later, you've got now we're going to have a South Tower impact, and if there's anything wrong with the first one, now they got it right. Is that possible to do in real time?
Real time, definitely. And like I said, just from seeing some of these college kids with the technology they were doing in their dorm, showing how that stuff could work, and then a conference from 2004, one of these trade shows where these guys were showing how you could do that on a table as you're videoing it, showing the audience on the screen what they're actually seeing, to where they were interacting with different vehicles in this made-up little Middle East town. They had Humvees driving around, and then they would push something in the way of it, and it would react, drive around as if it was a real vehicle, to where you couldn't even really tell, but it was all CGI and it was real time. Everybody forgets that's what they use, every Sunday in football. They've been using that for quite some time, with all the painted lines and graphics.
Good point. Very good
over the fields. I mean, that's real time CGI.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I look at that and I still think that's a great, a great tool. And you could have been turned on us that day with regard to that second tower's hit.
Oh yeah, for having to fly these things in there, remoting them in whatever kind of aircraft that they were at the time, it definitely seemed like the easiest thing would to take Air Force Strata tankers, the fuel tankers that are already those type of aircraft, filled with nothing but fuel for the pyrotechnics show, give it more weight to slam in there, same time paint it up to look like these. Of course, they're not going to have the windows on the outside, I think, like that one woman said, but you see it streaking across.
It was the Fox guy that called that in. I'm sorry, I just want to say it was the Fox guy that said something about the windows and such. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it just, because so much of that fuel was just exploded on the outside, that gave it the big movie Die Hard fireball, and then the original black smoke, so everybody could see what was actually going on. I mean, nothing was left burning on the inside. It was pretty empty when you saw, what's her name, standing on the corner with her hair blowing, standing at the edge of the gaping hole of the tower, waving out, going, "Hey, I'm okay, we need help," that kind of thing. That was one of the most creepiest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, that is. I won't say anything else. It's still to this day very disturbing. It is. All right, so we'll make short work of this. Andy and I, and I'm sure you two, have watched, and there was a time before we even knew you, Jeff, I guess, that we were in some kind of communication with Nico and the Web Fairy and Paula, let me get naked in a YouTube video, which is like, please, Paula, don't do that. And so, I mean, and then they've had problems with, like, the Church of Urantia. I mean, God, can it get any stranger? But now you're down in D.C., and all right, now maybe you have to parse your words, and that's okay. But I mean, is anybody getting anything done in these groups? I mean, I just think they get in their own way, and they just sink from the weight of their own bullshit.
I was just having that conversation an hour ago over this CIT Richard Gage stuff. I'm amazed. I was talking to a friend who we wrote a fairly long letter. She did most of it. A bunch of us signed on to it going, did you really write this letter? Did you really write this retraction to CIT? Because it sure does sound an awful lot like some of the other people that we've been dealing with that have infiltrated your groups. But, we've got somebody in the group who, like I said, after very close to retirement, somehow landed another gig, a technical writer. She's always been flighty and just kind of scatterbrained, but takes a gig with Amdocs for 8 months, writing technical proposals, and then she comes out of that. First she said she didn't even know who the hell they were, but comes out of that, and next thing you know, she is doing everything possible to show that we're wrong with our information, and that the people that we've been looking at since 2007 that we think are federal trolls, those are the good people, and they have nice shiny websites, and Jim Hoffman is right about this, and his girlfriend. The people that we're going after are running Richard Gage's A&E website. They also run Stephen Jones' website. They also run 9/11 Blogger and a couple other smaller sites. So she is going heads over heel trying to prove us wrong that, yes, there was a plane that crashed into the Pentagon. You can see it everywhere, and so we're not sure exactly what it is that she's doing. But she seems to have been slipped a Mickey while working there at Amdocs for that amount of time.
I'll say it now because I want to keep moving. But we're at this point, it is true that if there's something I feel is extremely indicting about Jones, and actually all of GCN show hosts, all of RBN show hosts, and whatever other nickel and dime outfits that's out there, whether it's Revere or whatever the hell it is, fine, great, that Craig cannot get a second on these shows. Now, that is so obvious, so conspicuous, and so constant. It's like, what is that telling us? Let's face it, Jones doesn't do anything except the WTC because he gets up to go to New York and makes a fool of himself and the cops protect him. That's the way I think. But anyway, doesn't do anything about the Pentagon, won't go near Shanksville. So, but what does it say to all of us that Craig, who probably is, in fact, I'm not going to say probably, he is the best researcher per venue there is. He did the most dead bang, nail it down jobs on the Pentagon, more so than anybody has ever done with either Shanksville or a WTC. How in a God, this guy can't get a cold. What does that say?
It says he's right.
Yeah, and what does that say about?
That's what it. It's that's as far as I. Yes,
it's a blackout.
And my God,
it's a total media blackout. He's been blacklisted. And that's what I've been trying to get across to people in the group. I mean, most people get it. They've seen the work that he's done, and that they see how dogmatic he is. But like I told everybody, I said, you can sit there and talk all day long about New York and what went on there, and nobody's really going to fight you over anything, any of that stuff that went on, any of the research. But you bring up anything about the Pentagon, all of a sudden, you're being attacked, not about your research, but about who you are, guilt by association, what you might have said in the past at a certain point. And the trolls that we've been going after for quite some time, that we've been fighting with since about 2007 online, this specific group, they do this link farming thing that you'll propose a question, maybe an idea, and then they'll send you a list that is, at least on a web page, about 2 feet long, full of links of sites where you need to go check these places out for this information. This person said this back in 2006 in this email to this person, and they do this within 15 minutes. So you know that they've got some sort of fantastic data mining technology, and that they're really not trying to keep a discussion going. They're actually trying to tie your time up with these link farms. Go look at all the sites where you find out nothing, and then they just personally attack you instead, rather than getting into the information.
But
yep.
But we've got these, with what's going on with Richard Gage right now and the CIT stuff. What it seems like 2 people are doing. They just keep saying, this is just so divisive. We don't need to do this right now. This is going to look bad for the movement. We don't want to look like we're saying anything bad about Richard Gage, because he's done so much for the movement. And I'm like, what's with all this deification? They set up these groups, and all of a sudden they become small churches, and you can't say anything about the CEO, or you're deemed unfit and unqualified.